Fear can be one of the most difficult things we deal with in our lives. It can wake you up at night. It can linger. It can paralyze you and lock you in place. It can make you do things that you normally wouldn't. Or it can even stop you from doing things that you'd love to. It can be about phobias, panic attacks, and most of it comes out of nowhere. It can thrill you and can also shake you to the core, but what if you could tame your fear? Do those things that you want to, but won't allow yourself to take that step that you didn't think you could. What if you could find the courage to push beyond all the blocks that hold you back? In today's world, with its constantly shifting scenarios, there's nothing more important to uncover than the things that chill us to the bone, the things that make our heart race and leave us sleepless and stressed. Let's explore some of the most compelling fears that we experience. The kind of fear where we're always imagining all of the things that can go wrong in our lives, and always creating scenarios that leave us exhausted and ready for something new. Today, we'll talk about mind fear in human design. If there's anything that we can attest to, it's that all fears are not equal. So if we know that not all fears are equal, then deciphering what scares us is the difference between having a flashlight in an unlit room or fumbling in the dark for something that can help us see our environment. The bottom line is this: knowing your triggers can go a long way. There's freedom in understanding where your fears come from and how you can learn to work with them. Although there are people who claim to be fearless, being truly fearless is quite uncommon. And in fact, it could potentially be dangerous. But bravery, that's completely different. There are lots of people who feel the fear, but they don't allow it to control them. But when you find the courage to push through your fears, you can find balance in your life, and it just makes life easier. So what exactly is fear? By definition, fear is a feeling brought on by perceived danger or a threat that causes a change in metabolic and organ functions, and ultimately a response. The response to fear can be fleeing, fighting, hiding, or in extreme cases, freezing, the whole deer caught in the headlights concept. Our fears can be in response to a certain stimulus or in expectation of a future threat. And since we know that fear has purpose, we also know that there is probably no way to completely eliminate it. But we definitely can work with our fear, and that way we can live an enriching life that isn't dictated by the things that scare us the most. Most of us can relate to the type of fear that makes us scream watching a horror movie, and the kind of fear that makes adrenaline flood our body. And before we know it, our legs are taking us away from the threat, even before our mind registers. That gut-wrenching type of fear is the most ancient type of fear, and was and still is a defense mechanism that we inherited from our ancestors. Back then, knowing when to run and when to hide was the difference between literally life and death. So when we're talking about fear in human design, we have to talk about the 3 places where fear can rear its ugly head. Those places are called awareness centers, and they have the capacity to guide us through our lives. And they can also give some level of cognizance to become aware of things. Awareness, by definition, is an aspect of consciousness that's unique to all life forms. In humans, it comes in 3 different ways: physical survival awareness, and emotional awareness, as well as mental awareness. The most primal of the awareness centers is the spleen, and this is all about raw instinct and survival. Another awareness center is the solar plexus. This one is all about emotional awareness and also a connection to spirit, or something that is bigger than ourselves. And lastly, the third awareness center is the Ajna. This talks about our beliefs about the world, and also the awareness that comes through our beliefs. If we go back to the spleen, again, we're talking about body consciousness. It's a body consciousness that manifests as taste, intuition, instinct, and it's also considered awareness in the now, or an immediate hit that gives you information. And if we circle back to the solar plexus, we know that this is about spirit consciousness, and it's all about feeling, emoting, and sensitivity. And this type of awareness is related to the emotional waves of the solar plexus. So it's about awareness that comes over time with the rise and fall of our emotional waves. It's also considered the place that in 2027, a mutation will occur that will shift the potential of this awareness. And finally, the Ajna is all about mind consciousness, and it's a mental field of awareness that occurs in the Ajna, and it embodies sensing, knowing, and understanding. The awareness of the Ajna is over all time, or a lifetime of awareness that never stops evolving. Now, if we talk about the fears of the awareness centers, the first one we can talk about is splenic fears. And those fears are our deepest and oldest fears. They're ones that have been part of the human experience for as far back as anyone can remember. These fears are considered primal because they talk about the survival of the human race. And because there's a physical component to the fear in the spleen, the fears here can be intense in their expression. And if we expand on the themes, they talk about the fear of authority, the fear of death, the fear of failure, the fear of responsibility, the fear of the past, a sense of inadequacy, and also the fear of the future. But in terms of fears, the ones that originate in the spleen are considered the ones that are easiest to push through. Those are the ones that, with bravery and courage, we can meet our fears head on. The theory is that the more we push through these fears, the less control they have of us. So every time we push that obstacle out of our path and decide that we're not going to allow it to make us scared anymore, it gets a little easier the next time we try and push it away. And eventually, instead of allowing the fear to control you, you're the one that holds the reins of your life. Another awareness center is called emotional awareness, or spirit consciousness. It's another place where fears can harbor. This is all about the things in our lives that make us nervous. And because it originates in the solar plexus, also called the emotional center, it's all about waves. So what that means is that the fear or nervousness can grow exponentially, or it can diminish to pretty much nothing at all. When we're describing the nervousness of the solar plexus, there's a few themes that we can talk about. One is being nervous about our fate. Another might be a feeling of emptiness. And also there's a feeling sometimes that nature is working against us. It can also be a feeling that we need to cling to traditions. And the question might be, what will happen if we break that tradition? There can be nervousness when things are too quiet, and also a nervousness about intimacy with other people. So some pretty intense themes, but just like the fears of any of the awareness centers, when we're aware of our triggers, it just gets easier to understand the fear, to recognize the fear, and not only to survive it, but also to thrive. The last awareness center that we're going to talk about is also the one that we're going to focus on today. This is called mental awareness or mind consciousness, and this is a fear of the mind and can be considered an anxiety over things. What can be said about these fears is that they're not survival based, and they also don't come and go like the nervousness of the solar plexus. These are created fears.
The fears of the Ajna center, the fears of the mind, fear that we call anxiety, and it's anxiety over things. This is not splenic fear. This is not about the basics of survival. This is about mind fear, Maya fear, illusion fear. Here is a place where fears can be created where no fear is necessary.
So when we talk about mind fears or mind anxiety, we're talking about this need that we have to control the world around us. And the way we feel we can control it is through our illusions. So let's illuminate our fears, our anxiety, and how the mind plays tricks on us and makes us scared of things that are not really true. So when we talk about the mind in human design, we're going to be talking about the head center and also the Ajna. Because the head center and the Ajna work in tandem. In other words, the head center provides the fuel or the inspiration, and then the Ajna, which is an awareness center, takes in that inspiration and it deciphers what it all means. So ultimately, the Ajna decodes all the information, and that's where our beliefs are formed. And one more thing that's important for us to know when we talk about the head and Ajna is that the head center is considered a pressure center. So the fuel that's feeding the Ajna comes with a level of pressure too. So that's something that most people will feel, that pressure, that anxiety that kind of is building up, and you need to sort of figure it out, and it gets worse and worse. So knowing what the pressure is and knowing when to unhook from it can really help a lot with the anxieties of the mind. Since awareness centers are all about our consciousness, or what we're consciously absorbing or feeling within our environment, they're quite important. And because of this, that means they're easier to condition. What conditioning means is that we start to believe that energy from other people is in fact our energy. So in other words, we can develop fears or be vulnerable to anxiety, in this case when we're talking about the Ajna, in the places that we have openness. And the places that we have definition or a defined gate or channel is the places that we actually will feel this anxiety. And this holds true for all of the awareness centers. So for instance, if we look at the spleen of somebody who has a definition in the gate 48 and also in the gate 44, we're going to say that this person probably has the fear of the gate 44, which is the fear of the past repeating itself, and also fear of patterns repeating themselves. You could say that they also have an adequacy as not having enough information, not knowing enough, because they have the gate 48 defined. And also they have the gate 50, which is the fear of responsibility. Now, if we're looking at the potential vulnerability to fear, we have the gate 57, which is the fear of the future, the gate 32, which is the fear of failure, the gate 28, which is the fear of death, and the gate 18, which is the fear of being imperfect or never getting things just right. So what we're saying is that we could have a lot of fears even though we don't have the definition, because we have been conditioned to have those fears. So recognizing those fears within us is probably one of the best gifts we can give ourselves, because then we know what fears are ours and also where we've been conditioned. And just as much as we're conditioned by people who are around us, people who we connect with, people who we live with, people who we work with, we're also conditioned by planetary transits. And usually that's related to the bigger planets. We will talk about those as we go through, but ultimately what we're saying is that we all have awareness centers, and no matter what kind of definition we have or don't have, fear, anxiety, and nervousness will definitely have some level of play in our lives. So let's go back to the Ajna, the place where we're going to put our focus. When we deconstruct the mind, we see that it all begins with an opinion, or what would be considered a belief that someone has formed about a topic or issue. The important thing to understand about an opinion is that there's no proof or validity to this belief or hypothesis other than what you give it. So in other words, it hasn't been proven to be true. Yet because these opinions come from our logical mind, it means that there is some level of logic that comes with these opinions, or a reason to believe them to be true, even if the idea or concept or opinion is not shared by other people. The bottom line is many people are invested in their opinions. And despite having little or no factual basis for the opinion, it can be an extremely personal opinion or belief, and that in itself is the dilemma of the gate 17, or the gate of opinions. And the biggest anxiety with these opinions is that you'll be challenged. And if you are, it might be discovered that you don't actually have the details to back up your opinion. And really all you have is suppositions. And the more someone questions your opinion, the worse the anxiety gets, until there's a culminating moment that results in a fight or flight. Because there's a deep-seated fear that rests just below the surface that you will not be understood, and that the hypothesis that is so very important, the information of the pattern that needs to be relayed, will not happen, and that you will miss the opportunity to make your opinion real, because basically you don't have all the facts and data to back it up. And it matters a lot because internally, you probably realize that opinion without facts is nothing at all, and that an opinion backed up with facts will always have some level of power. If we know that having more information makes our opinions stronger and more powerful, and that they can actually be out in the world and people will start to respond in a way that we feel good about, it makes sense that if we allow our opinions to evolve after we've gathered more details and have more information and data, we will be that much closer to our ultimate goal. And then the anxiety will start to diminish and we'll feel as if we're actually being heard and our opinions are being valued. We can't forget that there's always going to be a timing piece when it comes to energy from the Ajna or when we're speaking our mind. What that means is that when we gather the details, it's not only just gathering the details and blurting it out, it's gathering the details and also waiting until you're acknowledged. And when you do, it's just one more way that you're going to be heard exactly the way you want to be heard. And when you're waiting and you're collecting the information that you need to back up your opinion, and someone asks you what you think, then that is when the magic begins, because that's when people will grab onto what you say. And the fear that you have about being too late with valuable information or that you'll be challenged will take a back seat. And in that moment, when your words are being heard, you'll finally find freedom from the anxiety of the gate 17. The fear of rejection can come in many ways, but paired with a unique individuality or what might be considered mutative or far-reaching concepts, this fear can grow significantly. And that's the kind of anxiety that we're talking about when we're talking about the anxiety of the gate 43. The anxiety of the gate 43 never starts that way. It starts with a new conceptualization that feels like an extraordinary breakthrough or an insight of possibility that can feel overwhelmingly exciting. And usually this insight comes like a lightning bolt. But there's also usually another concept, and that's that you don't have any logical facts to back up your revelation. And sometimes the idea is so unique that even articulating or telling people what you want to do can leave you feeling hobbled because it's so difficult to find the words to describe it. But the need burns within you, this feeling that you need to relay the information to other people. And your inner knowing says that what you have dreamed can change the world. But since we know that the Ajna is all about right timing, for people who have this energy, there's probably been a history of being rejected for their fantastical concepts of their mind. And there can already be a feeling of being an outsider, a feeling that developed early in your childhood when people just didn't get you. So though this energy burns inside of you to be released, there's also this anxiety because expressing what others may consider unusual concepts or ways of thinking, and these ways of thinking are very personal. So it feels so difficult to hold it back until maybe one day you blurt it out and you get shut down. Or because of past experiences, you hold it in and the pressure increases. And so does the anxiety because you know how very important and life-changing the information you hold is for those who are willing to listen. To compound the anxiety is the idea that when you carry this energy, it's very easy for you to say, I know. And if in the past you've fallen short of explaining what you mean, you know, then there's a deep potential for reticence and anxiety about sharing that can become so overwhelming that it has you frozen in place. Until, of course, you realize that just like all the energy of awareness that we carry in our body, there's magic here too. And it all comes with the right timing and understanding that just because you may think differently than others, there's a place for you in the world, just like everyone else. When you embrace your uniqueness and the concept that the ideas that you have are here to mutate or change the world or the way people think, and also that when the timing is right, people will be open and willing to listen to what you have to say. And you'll finally find the freedom from anxiety when you give yourself permission to be exactly who you are. And if you don't believe me, just look at the trajectory of Steve Jobs, who had what might be considered quite a bumpy road on the way to bringing one of the most historically world-changing inventions into the world. And isn't it interesting how so many of his inventions begin with the letter I? And it makes you wonder if it was a testament to his own individuality.
Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become.
Now we move into the energy of peace, ideas, and also where white magic is said to originate according to the human design system, the gate 11. We could say that this gate and energy is very powerful if we imagine that this is the energy of illumination, and the anxiety of this energy is the opposite of light. In fact, it's all about darkness. Here is the place where there's a collection of stories. These are the stories of life. And with this energy, these stories are seen as treasures, basically gifts that can serve humanity. This energy can talk about somebody who has a plethora of ideas, more ideas than anybody can use in a lifetime. And just like all the other themes of the Ajna, this energy is all about possibility. But more often than not, there aren't any facts to back up this possibility. Nothing has been proven to be true. When you carry this energy, there can also be a deep connection with the visual sphere, especially through the left eye. What that means is that it's where we see, and over time, what we have seen becomes stored as memories. This could be a seeker of the light and joy and the stimulation of being alive. And this energy also talks about the world and how it can become a better place, and that many answers of our humanity and how we can have a better life can be found in the stories of the past. Yet, when reality shows its hand, and that though magic is real, it still has limitations because not everybody's on the same page as you. And then there's a deep and raw anxiety that says maybe there isn't hope found in our experiences in life, and that maybe pain and suffering is just that, and there is no higher purpose. And the one thing that we can say about this energy is that it's not just a mental process either. There's an emotional attachment here, and it makes it even more powerful on both spectrums of both hope and despair. But if there's anything that we can learn about life, it's that everything has a season, and that every experience, both those that are perceived to be good and those that are considered bad, give us another piece to the universal puzzle of life. And when we discover that meaning of what it means to us, then we can share it with those who cross our path. In truth, there is value and meaning in all experiences in life, even if we can't see it in the moment. And just like darkness and despair has its day, so too does hope and light.
You know, I think you'd agree, though, that difficulty, that pain, that adversity you may have dealt with, because of that, you're a little bit stronger now, maybe a little bit wiser, and maybe even have a greater sense of compassion and perspective for having gone through that. So we don't have to pretend to like difficulties when they come, but we need to keep that thread of attention that there are hidden gifts depending on how we respond to it. That's what I learned.
Now we enter the place of pressure, because all of the anxieties we're going to talk about are those that are fueled directly by the head center. In other words, these anxieties have a pressure component to them, and in that way may feel even more intense. And if there's anything that the roller coaster of life that 2020 has taught us, it's that these anxieties and fears can feel almost inescapable and feel a lot like chaos. By definition, chaos is a state of utter confusion, which means that the patterns of your life that you've hung your hat on for as long as you can remember are suddenly and inexplicably shattered. In reality, it's the fear that there is no order in the world. As humans, we build our lives on patterns. Regular routines are the fabric of our existence. Concepts like the sun rises and sets, that we shop here, we work there, are all part of the stories of our lives.
We've been asking people to stay at home during this pandemic.
At this Toronto bar, the St. Patrick's Day party is over before it even began. Across Canada, empty streets, closed businesses amidst a deepening lockdown.
Wednesday, March the 25th, Alert Level 4 was activated, and New Zealand went into an extreme and unprecedented nationwide lockdown.
The anxiety of chaos can be found in the energy of the Gate 4. The need to discover a predictable pattern in life has been the quest for humans from as far back as we can remember. And when the patterns are inconsistent or things feel chaotic, the first place we travel to find answers are to the things, people, or organizations that will somehow put everything back in order and remedy the chaos. When we talk about the energy that is shared with the Ajna and the head, then we also need to talk about the fuel. And in this case, the fuel comes from the Gate 63, doubt, suspicion, and seeking truth and proof. In 2016, Neptune, the planet of illusions, entered the Gate 63, which means it influenced the Gate 63 or activated. And up until February 2020, Neptune mostly stayed in that area. Now, if we combine the energy of the Gate 63 that fuels the anxiety of the Gate 4, we can see that this could very well have had people searching for answers and proof and also being suspicious of what was happening around them. If we take it one step farther and talk about Neptune and how Neptune will flavor the energy of the gate it is transiting, we can see the positive side of the energy, or the positive side of Neptune, is all about expressing yourself creatively, a rich imagination, compassion, and also seeking to find the meaning, the patterns and cycles of life. Which means that the energy for people studying astrology or understanding the mysteries and spiritual unknowns could have definitely taken an upswing. But because we can't have light without dark, on the shadow side, there could have been an increase in addictions, a need to disappear into a fantasy world, as well as exaggerations, and a need to stubbornly follow ideas that are potentially overblown, and especially our illusions about people and what they can give us. These illusions about people could definitely have played into an upsurge in false messiahs, the kind of people who would say all the right things that people need to hear based on the chaos they feel is all around them. And there was also a lot of potential for an increased amount of conspiracy theories. What that means is that this particular anxiety has been a strong force in the collective for quite a few years now. And now that there's a bit of receding of the tides of illusion where Neptune has moved on, the veil that has covered the truth is now being pulled back. And what we believe to be true may not be exactly as we had imagined it after all. And if we add in the fear of chaos into the ethers, the willingness to accept and also even give answers that seem a little unusual or not exactly sound may be accepted because people want to find the order in the chaos. And a lot of times they'll grab on to whatever theory is out there, anything really that will give you a sense of stability and also a feeling of comfort. And the key to this anxiety is to understand that an answer in desperation is not necessarily the truth. When you see that time and waiting and gathering more information might lead to a more viable answer, and that patience will eventually lead to you beginning to see the light, and slowly and steadily you can start to find a true solution to working with the chaos that you find yourself within. And if there's anything that we can hang our hat on, it's the idea that life is all about change. And just as much as there's going to be difficult patterns, there's going to be easier patterns. It's all the process that we have to go through when we're in this story of our lives.
With nations across the continent starting to lay out their strategies for lifting their lockdowns.
This morning, New York City is now just days away from reopening, ending one of the longest lockdowns in the country.
Europe's biggest economy is getting back to business.
For a few months, people weren't really sure what to expect. Now they see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Another energy and anxiety that we have all been dealing with more than average in the past few years, and especially in 2020, is that of a similar but different theme. This is all about the mental pressure and the need to know the unknowable. This is all about the anxiety that lives in the Gate 24. This energy comes with questions like, when will life get back to normal for us? When will all the threads of our existence be tied together? Ultimately, it's the need to know what the future will bring. Once again, there's been a tremendous amount of influence from the planets. And when I talk about big planets, I'm talking about planets that move very slowly and their energy is more powerful when they make transits. Pluto entered the gate 61, or the fuel for the gate 24, in 2018, and it will mostly remain there well into 2021, and even a little time in the beginning and end of 2022. So it really does move slowly. So its influence will remain ongoing. Saturn also entered the gate 61 in the second half of 2019 and has been mostly in there up until November 2020. And even Jupiter entered the fray in 2020, for a little while at least. If we explore more about what the energy or the pressure from the gate 61 is all about, it's part of the channel of the thinker, and it's about searching to know the unknowable, to really discover more about the mystery of who we are. But coupled with this mystery of self-discovery can also be a sense of psychosis and also a delusion about what exactly you're seeing. The most difficult part of this energy, and the part that can activate the anxiety, is that you not only will not know what to expect in the future, but also that even if you do somehow get the answers that you're searching for, people that matter will not be ready to hear about what you have to say. Once again, the theme of addiction can play a big part with this energy. It's all about when the pressure gets so much that you can't cope with it, that you will try and mute this anxiety pretty much any way that you can. And it's probably not by chance that both alcohol abuse and drug addiction have been very prevalent with the transits that we've been experiencing. If we expand it and pull in the planets and their influences and their themes on those particular gates, we'll get even a bigger perspective. So for instance, Saturn is all about structure and rules. Pluto is all about crisis and transformation. And Jupiter just makes things bigger. So if we combine all the energies together, we can see that there could be a rationalizing of the status quo of governments, and also the concept that the ends justify the means, no matter how draconic the solutions. Alternatively, it can talk about searching to discover the hidden knowledge that governments, religions, and pretty much any organization is hiding, and a paranoia about what exactly they're doing behind closed doors. This fear of ignorance makes this energy open to any kind of information that will give insight, which can lead to more anxiety about the world, and this whole concept that you're not prepared because you won't have the important information that you need to survive, evolve, and also to be educated about. And this pressure can get so extreme that it eventually leads to this sense of hopelessness and also a melancholy, because there's a sense that you will never have a definitive answer to the questions that are most important to you. The key with this energy is to understand that your need to know can sometimes be overblown, and that this search for the unknowable can be so intense that it might actually feel like it's a matter of life and death. Questions to ask yourself when this anxiety gets intense might be, what do I need to know that will truly affect my life? And what don't you need to know? What is the information that's not really helpful or constructive in your present life? And the last and most important question to ask might be, is the answer that I seek something that I may never have an answer for? And it's also important to understand the concept that even though you feel that you need to give the information that only you can give, people will learn when they're open, and they will receive when they're ready. Seeing the individuality of everyone's process helps you see that when the information is required, people will seek it out. And it's also important to remember that pondering is fine, but many times it never delivers the answers that you want. But if you can be patient in your knowing that when you need to know, it will be given to you, and let the rest of it go, you can unwind the mind chatter that takes too much space up in your mind and take a break from your overactive thoughts, instead of being tugged into a world of paranoia and delusion that only heightens the anxiety that has you grasping for straws, but never really getting the answers that you've always been searching for.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were all meant to shine as children do. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
And last but not least is the final anxiety of the Ajna. This one comes from the gate of oppression and realization, or the energy of trying to make sense of things or trying to translate the past and the value that is contained within it. This is the energy of the gate 47. This energy asks the question why, and it talks about the futility of the experiences of life. This is why or why not pressure. This energy comes with the need to discover why things happened the way they did, and also what the meaning of it was. The pressure that fuels the energy of the gate 47 is the gate 64, the gate of confusion or epiphany. This energy talks about a busy mind with a large quantity of data floating around, much more data than is needed. And because of the sheer quantity of this information, the gate 47 filters the data and decides what's important and what's not. Basically, it finds the gems worth paying attention to. This pressure can be all about the experiences in life and the value that they bring. The anxiety that's found here is the concept that there is nothing defined in the experience, that in fact our experiences are futile and pointless. There can be a need to find something in the past that will illuminate the future, to somehow find hope in what has already happened, no matter how small that is. This need to find the value in the experience, whether good or bad, hinges on the concept that if there is no meaning in what has happened, there really isn't much fulfillment in our lives. There can be a deep need to see that being human is not only important, but it's valuable. Many have heard the concept that we have chosen to be on this earth at this time, that we are lucky to be here. These types of theories seek to close the feeling of futility that we might feel as we repeat the same actions every day in our lives. And the question might be, if every time I do this, this happens, so what's the point? And it can create a kind of mental pressure that fuels the anxiety even more. And this pressure can get stuck in the concept that if the experience is tough, then life is tough. And really, there's no value in it. And it can get to the point where there's a need to bypass this life and to get on to the next one. A life that holds more meaning than what you have in your present one. Yet the key to this energy is to understand that when you enter into life correctly, with openness to your purpose, that there isn't any experience in your life that doesn't have value and meaning. When you see the power in your experiences, it can transform you. And your transformation can begin a domino effect and not only benefit you, but others too. And you can finally find the proof that through your life experiences, there is a reward and also there is value in every one of them. And as Ra Uru said, the secret to this energy is patience and waiting for the moment of realization, or that aha moment when all the ruminations that had you trapped in your mind finally make sense. There's no doubt that there are a multitude of anxieties that you experience every single day. But when you see the fear and anxiety for what it truly is, you can start to let go of the things that have held you tight for way too long. And then you can finally find the freedom to find a new path. One where fear still exists, but you, not it, decides how much control it has in your life. And if there's anything that we can hold close to our heart, it's the sage words of Ra Uru, who said, "It's essential to accept what is there, and not to fear any of these fears, but to thrive on their gift to expanding and evolving awareness." Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, take good care of you, because the world needs more of the light that only you can give.